Hello. Welcome to my car. Very windy outside. Very blustery. I wanted to make a short video talking about listening, which is a constant theme, I think, for this channel. Where if we become better listeners, not only to other people, but also to ourselves, our life gets better. And we tend to manifest better things in our life. And this obviously pertains to relationships, romantic relationships. A lot of people watching this, I know, because of the coaching that Marvin Daniels and I do, are trying to manifest a romantic relationship, a specific person, an SP. And there's such an emphasis, I think, in the SP community, the law of assumption community, to do techniques, to try to do something to solve this situation, to get that specific person back, or to manifest more love in my life. And that's not really listening. Something else we talk about on this channel a lot, an example of trying to do something, which can be helpful without question, is something like affirming. And as we know, very popular on YouTube is this idea of robotic affirming, which Sammy Ingram has spoken about at length very, very, very well. And it's this idea of, if I can imbue my subconscious with a thought by saying something, talking basically to myself over and over and over and over again, by saying something, eventually I will believe it. And there's, without question, a lot of truth to that. You know, this kind of modern form of affirming that Sammy talks about is not different than what Emile Coué spoke a lot about, who's probably my favorite LOA teacher, or is my favorite LOA teacher. Which is, if you repeat something, if you say something enough to yourself, eventually it starts to become true for you. However, how this is presented in the community on YouTube and elsewhere is in this very, you could say, sophomoric way. And that is one reason why the advice I share, especially when it comes to SP stuff, is I basically start where other people end. People ask me all the time, why do you say it's not going to work? Why do you say I'm not going to manifest my SP back? Because you're probably not going to manifest your SP back. I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear. The large majority of you will not manifest your SP back. The large majority of you will get turned off by just robotically affirming something over and over and over and over again. Likewise, the majority of you will get turned off just by trying to do SATs, the way Neville described it, repetitively night after night, and not seeing changes in the 3D that you want. It's not going to work well for the majority of you. What I'm saying is that is not what these teachings are really pointing to at a deeper level. If you want to integrate them in your life, especially about something like a loving relationship with someone else. You think just saying something over and over and over again is going to fix your life completely? It's not. You have to believe it. And believing it comes when we listen. See, why robotic affirmations work, why the stuff that Coué talked about works so well, and how Coué described our imagination is that we're always saying something. Our mind is always going, right? But if you become passive enough inwardly, what you're saying almost becomes hypnotically induced within you. And by that, I mean that if you are doing something like robotically affirming, saying something over and over and over again, it's not the saying of the thing that makes it happen. It's the belief, which often occurs when you've said something so many times that you stop thinking about it the way that you have been thinking about it before, and you're kind of tired. You're in this more passive, receptive state. You've essentially hypnotized yourself, which is what most of this stuff is, period. It's just you're hypnotizing yourself. All these techniques are about hypnotizing yourself, essentially. You've said something so many times, you're kind of on autopilot with this saying, and all of a sudden, it clicks on a deeper level. And you actually hear it for the first time. Even though you've said it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 100,000 times, you finally hear it. And if you keep on saying something enough, eventually you start hearing it more. You listen. The listening automatically happens. That's the imagination. That's the deeper stuff. In this listening, you could say, for the still small voice, that's what this stuff's really about. That's how you're going to get your SP back, if you do get your SP back. And again, the majority of you are not going to get your SP back, because what you're going to find is that when you've done this work, when you've really worked on yourself, and you realize that what you really want, you already have within you, and that you truly are the SP, you're going to probably realize that that person you wanted is not the right person eventually. It might not happen right away. But, you know, when I work with people, when Marvin and I work with people, the majority of people we work with, the successful, the people who are successful, they manifest somebody better. Again, you don't want to hear it, but you need to hear it. I'm not saying it won't happen for you. It absolutely can happen. And listen, just robotically affirming, I mean, Sammy has shown that. Just robotically affirming for a lot of people will work. But you have to robotically affirm to the point where it's not at all about what you're saying. It's about what you're hearing and starting to actually hear. It's all hypnotic. Most of this stuff's simply hypnotic, if not all of it. And that's why, you know, someone like myself, a lot of people who watch this channel, you know, have been into my content for a long time. You know, like what I like to do is something you could say that's very different than that, which is just sit and listen for God. Because God's always here. But you have to listen to hear God. Consciously, at least, right? You might not even know that He's here unless you really listen hard. And that means just sitting and waiting, usually. Waiting. Trustful passivity, as H. Emily Cady like to say, or the golden key, as Emmett Fox like to say, where you just sit and think of God, and, well, God's all around me. God's everything. But do I hear that still small voice? Often you have to sit a while to hear it. And sometimes you're not going to hear it at all. You might have to sit a few hours later, or you might be sitting a few times a day and not hear it for days on end. And then you hear it. But once you hear it, you know. See, these are all the same thing. Robotic affirmations, trustful passivity, SATs, they're all pointing to the same thing, in my opinion. And it's a lot more about listening and being able to hear that still small voice than it is about doing, talking, saying, taking action in terms of a technique, saying robotic affirmations. Saying robotic affirmations is great, but it's great because you will get to a point where all this saying, all this talking will inevitably make your mind silent for a moment, and that's when it clicks. I hope that this made sense to some of you. This is, again, very, very far out. And when I work with clients, I don't necessarily get that far out when it comes to SP situations. But this is the underlying thing. It's always the same. And, people can leave these comments if they want on my channel, but please don't, I would prefer if people stop leaving comments all the time. Like, you say robotic affirmations don't work. You say I can't manifest my SP back. Robotic affirmations work. You can manifest your SP back, okay? I'm also telling you that if you're just doing robotic affirmations to manifest your SP back, in all likelihood, that's not going to be enough to get your SP to stay with you long term and have a loving, healthy, sustainable, wonderful relationship over the next few decades. That is what I want to help you do, is foster that loving relationship with yourself and another romantic partner for decades to come. That's the big work. Not enough people talk about that. That's what we want to focus on. That's what we want to listen to ourselves and listen to others in order to do. So I hope this was helpful.